Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Chapter 14, Peace, Peace. From the day that the temple was opened, membership in the 12 tribes, which totaled 144,000, froze. Suddenly, it was as difficult to win new disciples as it had been before the temple agreement had been signed. Both Rayford and Chaim were prepared for it. They switched their emphasis after the temple opening from outreach to inreach. Bases gradually moved from paying rent to squatting in disused buildings. Laptops were updated to models that would pick up email from public phone booths, and more time was spent on theory. During those first 7.5 months, few of the 144,000 members had been able to find time enough to read, much less digest all the truth that was in the material that Chaim and Rayford had prepared. Now they could spend whole days studying and discussing what had been prepared specifically for them and for their place in history. Translators completed the articles that they had not been able to finish earlier, and Neville and Rayford were able to update all of the studies on the internet, creating links for sites in virtually every major language. CDs and audio cassettes were prepared and stockpiled, along with hundreds of tons of printed literature. The material itself was altered in many cases because of what was going to be needed for the next great surge would be different to what had taken place. Rayford explained it in an article called "The Seal and Beyond." He wrote, "You people have been sealed, or especially selected by God to be the force that he uses to proclaim his message to the entire world in the last 3.5 years of his church history. Don't be surprised that you cannot see some outward evidence of your seal. The seal itself is known only to God, but our miraculous coming together as a worldwide visible force is the greatest proof that he has chosen us. It may be that God will bring in others to take the place of any of us who die or who turn away from following the Lamb. But apart from that, there will be no further growth in our numbers. You could say that our fate has been sealed. However, as you each must realize, we still have our free will. We can still choose to reject our calling and be lost. Do not be drawn into tempting God by believing the lie that he has no right to take away our inheritance, as he did with the Jews, and as he has done with the institutional church. For if you do, your place will most assuredly be given to someone else. Nevertheless, God, who knows the end from the beginning, must know that at least the majority of us will freely choose not to turn back. Similarly, he knows that the majority of those who have not been included in our members will refuse to turn to him no matter what happens. What remains for us to do now is to point the way for great multitudes to escape the curse of the Antichrist. But to do that, to a large extent, actually create the greatest tribulation. I will explain. As you know, people are daily accepting the mark of the beast, and they are doing it by the millions. They have been told by their religious leaders that they could do it and then claim ignorance, or that they can make some demand upon God's grace when Jesus returns, and they will be saved. It will be our job to preach most strongly against that lie, at the same time that we actually do offer those billions who have accepted the mark of the beast one last hope of salvation. Like I said, we saw this kind of behavior during 2020, 2021. All the religious leaders, our Archbishop over here, the Church of England, Justin Welby, I think his name is, he was like, "Oh, Jesus would take the shot," and I was like, "What is this guy doing? What is he doing? What is he doing?" And I was like, "Okay, so we believe Jesus healed the blind, he made the blind see, he healed the lame, he made cripples walk, he healed lepers, but we don't believe Jesus is going to save you from some respiratory disease. You don't believe Jesus is going to save you from, you know, the Divock." Unbelievable. Because that was one of the things I said, you know what, if it happens, it happens. You know what I mean? But I'm going to trust the Father. I'm going to trust the Father. So, like I've said before, it's up to you whether you want to believe. Was we saved by the Father, or was it total nonsense? Because remember, they said, "Oh, black people, you know, they're more susceptible to the disease. They're dying." You know, we're still waiting for the pandemic of the you know. Where is it? Where is it? We're still here, live and kicking. The 12 tribes were shocked by Rayford's claim that there could be a means of salvation even after people had accepted the mark, but Chaim backed him up in what he said. You know, the Bible says there's no turning back, but that's one of the things in this book I like. And again, like, if this wasn't Eurocentric, I would not be reading this. I swear down, I would not be reading this, but because it's like fairy tale version, replacement theology, I'm just reading it. But as we say in the Israelite community, eat the meat, spit out the bones. They were not told, however, what form their message of salvation to the marked ones would take. They were only told that it would be revealed to them after the final 3.5 years had started. For now, they should teach as strongly as possible against such a hope. The tribes had heard enough to do two things. For one thing, what they heard challenged each one of them to ask God for reassurance that they had not been deceived. They were living in a time of great deception, as had been prophesied, and what Rayford and Chaim were saying sounded suspiciously like the lie of perverted grace that they had each been delivered from. The other thing that the message had done was to purify the attitude towards others who had taken the mark. It was so easy to be self-righteous if, in fact, there was no further need to love these eternally damned people. But what if the world was not yet eternally damned? And what if the 144,000 themselves could be eternally damned? Such doubt about their own salvation and about the hopelessness of others was good for them. It worked against their naturally tendency toward religious pride. In the meantime, while the 12 tribes waited for the day to come when the message of salvation would be preached to the damned, it was hard to believe that they were actually living in the last days. The world had miraculously recovered from the greatest disaster in recorded history, as people put behind them the tragedy of more than 35 million deaths in America's collapse. On the heels, family in America, reading these things, like I mentioned it like again and again, America must go, America will be destroyed. Don't worry, family. Just don't worry. Just don't worry. Keep reading the scriptures and you will be reassured. You will be reassured. On the heels of that horrible event, the rest of the world was in fact prospering as it had never done before. Zhu Dangchao's incredible leadership had brought in a number of changes, each of which had benefited virtually everyone. Even the 12 tribes themselves had been benefited from the new era of religious tolerance. How hard it was to believe that the future held pain and suffering in store for the world, which would make the significance of the fall of America shrink by comparison. Like I said, this is why what's happening right now, all the problems which are coming, economic crisis is next. It's the next big event, then war, and then the Antichrist is going to come with all the answers. Everything's going to seem amazing. Everyone's going to line up for their mark. Everyone's going to be, yay, singing, feed the world, make it a better place. Everyone's going to think everything's amazing. It's going to look really good. Everything which should have been done over the past 50 years is going to start. And everyone's going to think, oh, this is amazing. The age of Aquarius. But we know. Okay, we know. So don't fall for it. Use it. Use it. Chaim had written in a list of instructions on how they should use their time during this period of apparent worldwide peace. But don't for a minute believe that is genuine, he warned. Chaim and Rafe had both believed that the authorities must have taken notice of their little movement by now, and they knew that it would be just a matter of time before the axe would fall. I'm going to skip a section here. Air travel itself was becoming increasingly more difficult, both because of the need for a mark to purchase a ticket and because of the number of authorities and regulations governing it. Please just trust me in the bits I'm skipping, it's not messing up the story, it's just not giving away certain things. Travel itself was becoming increasingly more difficult, both because of the need for a mark to purchase a ticket and because of a number of authorities and regulations governing it. Some Bible experts had taught that the place of hiding would be in Petra, a city carved out of solid rock in Jordan, but it would hardly be impenetrable against modern technology. And if it was to have been secret, that cover had been blown by all the commentators who had announced it as the secret place in their writings. Scripture called the place of refuge the wilderness or a desolate place, but neither of the two leaders could say where it would be. For the time being, they urged members of the movement to just maintain a low profile in their own localities and to take comfort in the Rock of Ages and in his teachings, which the Bible promised would be like a solid rock protecting them from the coming floods and storms. Matthew 7:24 and 25. Neville was joined by other computer experts who had become part of the 12 tribes, and together they had devised a series of satellite relays for their website, which would make it difficult to track them down. But they still knew that it would only be a matter of time before an important link of communication would also be cut off. It was less than 3 years since the temple had been opened in Jerusalem. Half a dozen high-level security experts were gathered in semi-darkness around a series of sophisticated computers and other hardware in an office in Moscow. On a Monday evening in late June, other office staff had gone home for the night. One of the experts, a big man named Sergei, broke the silence as they all stood staring at the screen on one particular computer. obviously waiting for something to happen. Any of you guys ever visit the site yourselves? He asked, innocently, in an effort to ease the boredom. The others looked at each other, hesitant about answering. Sergei guessed that he had asked an embarrassing question, but he tried to patch the matter up with further talk. It's ridiculous, really. They think people can live without money. They say the implant comes from the devil, and Sergei laughed nervously. Still no response. The others turned and looked at Sergei, as though waiting for him to say more. I only checked it out because my son told me about it, he said defensively. But that put him in even deeper. Eyebrows raised, and Sergei's heart sank as he realized what he had done to his son by trying to excuse himself. You see, people will always be curious. Like, even now, they watch our channels. They say they don't believe. They say it's nonsense. The Bible's a fairy tale. But they still watch our channels, you know. They're still listening. They still listen. So even in this time, where it's becoming controversial, it's almost illegal. Everyone has to stick to this one world religion. There's no other preaching against the mark and stuff. Even this guy's son is curious about this website. Well, he didn't really. He began, not certain how he would finish the sentence. There it is, shouted one of the other officers, whose eyes had turned to the monitor. Sergei and his son had been spared, at least for a moment. It's in England, West London. The men had succeeded in tracking down Rayford Straight's internet provider. We'll pull the plug on these traitors right now, said an older man who appeared to be in charge. But first, we need to find out who's behind it. Oleg, get on the phone to London. The staff at Web Wonders in Clapham Junction were just finishing up for the night when it happened. The explosion came not from within, but from above. A powerful laser that cut straight through the building and then exploded outward, totally reducing everything and everyone in that building to a pile of ashes, while at the same time leaving neighbourhood buildings with little more than scorch marks on their walls. Web Wonders and all of their staff no longer existed. The Great Tribulation was about to begin. End of chapter. Zion Ben Jonah writes, many Bible commentators talk of 7 years of Great Tribulation just before Christ returns, but the revelation is clear about there being two distinct halves of the final 7 years. They are variously described as the 3.5 years, 42 months, or 1,260 days. Revelation 11, 2 and 3, Revelation 12, 6 and 14, 13 and 5. And Daniel 7, 25, 9 and 27. It is only the second 3.5 year period that is full of great trouble. The first half is what we call the plastic peace. While many have pointed to wars as the sign that the end of the world is near, Jesus actually said that wars are a sign that it is not near. Matthew 24 and 6. Rather, the scriptures warn that the Antichrist will gain spiritual control of the world through peace, or in some translations, through prosperity. Daniel 8, 23, 25. The Apostle Paul, writing about the end time, warned that sudden destruction would follow a time when everyone was saying peace, peace. 1 Thessalonians 5 and 3, we're very familiar with that. The Revelation also talks about an army of 144,000 faithful followers of the Lamb. Revelation 7, 2 to 4 and 14, 1 to 12. At the same time that it mentions a great multitude which no one could number. Revelation 7, 17. This multitude is in some way brought to God during the period of great tribulation. Some believers are miraculously protected at that time, Revelation 12:14, but others are slaughtered in great numbers, Revelation 13:7. A puzzling paradox. Who saw the interview? Who saw the Tucker Carlson interview? Oh my gosh, that was so good. I was just like this. I was just listening. Did it not feel like he was talking to us? Did it not feel like Vladimir Putin was talking to us? The West, the normal people of the West. I enjoyed the history lesson. And I've never heard a politician just talk so frankly, just so direct, so straight. And like, I was just captivated. And it's like, why can't our politicians just talk like this? Instead of all this shadowy talk and all this nonsense, the whole word soup and avoiding questions. Like, the guy just broke it down. He just broke it down. And I love the way he said something about the relationship between Russia and the US. And the same applies for us. Like we've adopted that. He said, it's not like husband and wife, you know. There's no bitterness and resentment. We just accept that we're not welcome here. And I thought, boom, that just sums it up for us Israelites. No more animosity, no more begging, no more asking, no more asking for equality. Just, okay, send us home. We're done. We're done. We finished with this world. We checked out. We've had enough. We just want to go home now. But it was a really good interview. And I can't believe he spoke about an author, because remember I told you I was like thirsting for some new like literature. Literally last week I bought this. So I've heard so much, like the geezer's name just appears all the time. So I thought, yeah, I'm gonna challenge myself with this because I've heard so much and I'm just interested. So I start from the beginning and we'll see how it goes, because this seems like my kind of guy. Should be interesting. So this month I will be mostly reading Dostoevsky. And I just kind of half expected a mic drop from Putin at the end of that interview. And you see Tucker's face, like when he's just dropping bombs and dropping facts, and he's just saying, go and ask Zelensky, go and ask your leaders, go and ask your intelligence committees. And I was just going, say it. I just wanted to look at the camera and say, I have spoken.